I really kind of look at it in three parts. I look at it at three ways in terms of the threat assessment. The first would be cyber-terrorism. I would group that in just a big category of those individuals throughout the world that want to do harm to the United States. To me, that's the first threat.
I am from the Governor's Homeland Security Advisor, and I'm also the Secretary of the newest state agency here in California, which is the California Emergency Management Agency, where we combine the offices of emergency services and Homeland Security. Our overall mission covers the spectrum of Homeland Security and emergency management. It goes from prevention, protection, preparedness, response, and recovery. You're going to hear a lot about the threats and the risks, which are very real. Mostly what you're going to be hearing about today is the external malicious threats. And they are very real. I think we had the question over here, who's doing it and whether there's cooperation. Well, when you have nation states who are doing it, they're not going to be cooperative. And sometimes they have loose systems that they, I think we all can be a little bit frustrated with China. They're very good and very efficient on cracking down on their dissidents and to know exactly who they are. But when it comes to things coming from there, we don't, we have a loose system and we don't know. So you've got nation states. You have criminal elements that the Bureau knows a lot about, and Karen does as well, from prosecutions that we have from the former Soviet Union, Eastern Empire, Eastern Europe. The other issue with that is Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda and non-nation states who are terrorist organizations, they are growing their capacity and capability in the information technology fields. It has become their major source of recruitment in terms of how they reach out and how they communicate with people. They're very sophisticated in terms of how they can communicate by embedding and using the internet system to keep us from seeing what they're trying to do and what they're doing. It's only a matter of time, and as you heard this morning, the rate and pace of change is just phenomenal in this area.
The second threat would be cyber spying. So those are people who want our information. They don't want to leave footprints or fingerprints. They want to come in, get the information, and take it back to their countries for whatever reason.
My name is Mark Culp, and I'm the Cybercrime Supervisor for the FBI here, or one of two cybercrime squads here in San Diego. We are clearly not where we should be. We are far from it. We are very insecure. Foreign counterintelligence we've seen a lot of. We're losing intellectual property on a daily basis. We're losing secrets that we invested millions of dollars in obtaining, and it's happening every single day. The foreign counterintelligence threat, we've lost the war in some respects in cybersecurity in that regard, and we've got to find ways to take back some ground.
The third category is really cybercrime. That's organized crime, doing it for money. That's the disgruntled IT employee who's been fired and wants to get back at people. That's sort of, to me, and a lot of our cases have been those intrusion cases, sort of the basic cases here in our area. As I approach my job and we attack those three main problems, they really play out in different ways for prosecutions.
Revenue for cybercrime has surpassed the revenue for drug trafficking. So bad guys go where the money is. If cybercrime revenue is going up as exponentially as it is, we are going to continue to see an increases in cybercrime. So we as a nation need to figure out how we move our resources to address the cybercrime problem, and perhaps just reallocate those resources to different things.
Good morning, I'm Bill Lanson. I'm the Chief of Police of the City of San Diego, and I'll give you a little insight to what we're doing and how things have changed for us. And I can tell you that the two most rapidly increasing crimes in the city of San Diego, and it's not just San Diego, but it's across the nation, is internet crime as it relates to identity theft, and then crimes against children across America today. And it's incredible amount of people that are starting to turn to internet crime because it's far more lucrative, it's less dangerous to them, and much more difficult for us to prosecute.
And the shock, just last year, the city of San Francisco was locked out of their computer systems by a disgruntled IT employee. He was arrested and locked up, and the mayor was getting advice not to cave in and don't talk to him, and we're going to crack this thing. And after, I think it was about 2 days. But yeah, 4 days going with the whole thing that, all right, the mayor said, forget this, I'm gonna go talk to him in prison and get the damn code to unlock the computers.
My squad's focused primarily on the criminal cases out here. I'm interested in making cases and actually taking people that have hacked and bringing them to justice.
Software is very, very complex, and the larger you get, the more complex it gets. Quite frankly, these programs that are billion lines of code, they don't really know everything it does, right? So there's always going to be vulnerabilities. And the problem is the attacker only has to find one, and we have to defend against them all.
When you were talking about, there was a question about prosecutions in the law and what we can do. What keeps me up at night is the very thing that makes our computer systems so exciting and attractive and why we want them in the first place, and that's connectivity. We love the fact that we're connected around the world. We love the fact that with the speed of light, we have information at our fingertips. But that worries me because it makes us incredibly vulnerable. From my perspective, as I described the three different my three approaches to this problem, we don't have an extradition treaty with China, and I don't think we ever will. And so when you have connectivity of that kind, and our targets are in other countries, we can't touch them as prosecutors unless we have the body. We have to have the person here to prosecute. To convict them before a jury here in San Diego, I need the person here, and we have to rely upon extradition treaties to do that. When there's connectivity of the kind that I've described, and hackers can work through China or countries where we don't have an extradition treaty, prosecutions have their limits. So we do need new laws in this area. I think that's the reality, is that we need new extradition treaties to keep up with the pace of change. I don't know that our statutes, our federal charging statutes, really have kept up the same way that we would hope. We do see good sentences, but it's not the kind of thing, it's not life sentences, it's not something you would expect.
We had the case this summer. It was one of the longest sentences for a computer intrusion case. An individual got over 5 years for hacking into his former employer and deleting databases and disrupting the company. So
that's what I was getting at in terms of deterrence and why it's in your interest to protect your own information and your own companies, because the reality is, if that's the deterrence, it's no deterrence at all.
Short sentences, for as difficult as these are to investigate, is a difficulty.
The way we investigate them is actually interesting because the computer, the ISP codes and everything is so complicated. The way we can track it is actually from the money. If someone's committing a cybercrime, they're doing it for money usually, and so if we follow the money, we can find the defendant usually, because if they're in it for profit.
The weakest link in security. What do you consider the weakest link in security?
Insider threats.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Consensus. We
I
have
would say
consensus.
it's
Maybe that's
As the doctor talked about in terms of the codes, millions of codes and how you test these things, we've got to do a better job on some of these security systems of really doing the exercise and thinking through. We have the supercomputer thinking power and things out there.
We're not sure where the software was written, what was the intention of the people writing it, and so this long-term trust relationship between the vendors and the users of those systems has broken down, because now what it is, it's driven on cost. And you go worldwide for the cheapest cost, you got to go. So we have a supply chain issue. So I've given you a vision of where we are with why we have the cyber problem. It's not just why did all of a sudden it happen. It had happened because we made conscious decisions to move technology in a certain way. But we also have to address it because of the benefits of that technology and the overall cost savings, but we've lost security. So what we now have to do is have a conscious program to put security back into our cyber world so that we can actually use this in a safe and protected manner.
It really requires a public-private partnership